There's something especially difficult about a family murder case when the person convicted of destroying the family continues saying, "It wasn't me." And even after the verdict, people who loved him still believe him. Welcome to episode 6 of our family tragedy series. Tonight, we're going to Stellenbosch, South Africa. Because in January 2015, 5 members of one wealthy family went to sleep inside a heavily secured residential estate. By morning, 3 were dead. A teenage girl had almost been killed. And the only other person left standing was her brother. Henri van Breda told police a masked stranger had entered their house, attacked his family with an axe, fought with him, then disappeared. There was just one problem. Police couldn't find evidence that this mysterious man had ever been there. And 3 years later, a judge concluded that the stranger Henri described didn't exist. Tonight, we're talking about the Van Breda family murders. Welcome to the podcast You Can't Unhear. The Van Bredas were originally from South Africa, but spent years living in Australia. They lived in places including Perth and Queensland before eventually returning to South Africa. Henri's father, Martin van Breda, was a successful businessman. His mother was Teresa. Henri had an older brother, Rudi, and a younger sister, Marli. By 2015, the family was living in De Zalze Golf Estate near Stellenbosch. And this wasn't an isolated farmhouse where somebody could easily wander inside. De Zalze had controlled entrances, security guards, electric fencing, cameras, and patrols. Sometime during the early hours, something happened upstairs. Rudi, 22 years old, was attacked in the bedroom he shared with Henri. Martin entered the room. He was attacked too. Teresa and 16-year-old Marli were also struck. The weapon was an axe belonging to the household, and a knife was also involved. The violence was severe. Martin, Teresa, and Rudi died. Marli survived, but suffered devastating injuries to her head and neck. Henri had comparatively minor injuries. For the next several hours, he didn't call emergency services. At approximately 4:24 a.m., Henri made a phone call, but it wasn't to police. It wasn't to an ambulance. He called his girlfriend. According to the prosecution, emergency services wouldn't hear from him until approximately 7:12 a.m., almost 3 hours later. During that time, evidence presented in court suggested at least some members of the family may still have been alive. Prosecutor Susan Galloway later argued that Henri smoked several cigarettes while waiting, instead of urgently seeking medical help. And then, finally, he called. The recording became one of the most discussed pieces of evidence in the entire trial. Henri calmly explained that his family had been attacked. He said an axe had been used. He gave the dispatcher his address, then gave another nearby address, because there appeared to be confusion over locating the estate. The conversation lasted roughly 25 minutes. Emergency operator Janine Philander later testified that Henri sounded so calm, she initially wondered if the call was a prank. At one point, she thought she heard what sounded like a giggle. Now, demeanor alone proves absolutely nothing. People react to trauma differently. Some scream, some freeze, some become strangely calm. So prosecutors couldn't convict Henri because he didn't sound emotional enough. They needed physical evidence. And that's where his story began falling apart. Henri said he'd heard noises during the night. He opened the bedroom door and saw a man dressed in dark clothing, wearing gloves and a balaclava, attacking Rudi with an axe. His father then entered and tried to intervene. According to Henri, the attacker continued through the house. Henri claimed he eventually fought him, managed to take possession of the axe, and the man escaped. He also said he heard other voices, suggesting there may have been more than one intruder. It sounds terrifying. But police arrived at De Zalze and started asking a very simple question. How did these people get in? The first responding officer found no obvious evidence of forced entry. No valuables appeared to have been stolen. Nothing downstairs suggested a robbery. The family's possessions were still there, and estate security recorded no suspicious person entering or leaving around the relevant time. The home was inside a security complex with strict access controls, cameras, fencing, and patrols. The state argued there was simply no evidence supporting a home invasion, a hired hit, or an unknown intruder. Then investigators looked at Henri himself. Henri had cuts and stab-type injuries on his torso and arm. According to him, they came from his struggle with the attacker. But forensic experts noticed a dramatic difference. The injuries suffered by his family were catastrophic. Henri's were mostly superficial. A forensic pathologist testified that several were consistent with injuries that could have been self-inflicted. There were also no significant defensive injuries one might expect from someone desperately fighting an axe-wielding attacker. Again, that alone wouldn't be enough. Then came the blood. Henri said he had been near his father and brother during the attack because he was witnessing and trying to survive it. So some blood on his clothing wasn't automatically suspicious. But forensic blood pattern evidence went further. His sleeping shorts contained dozens of impact spatter stains. DNA testing linked numerous stains to Rudi, as well as blood from Martin. His socks also carried blood associated with multiple members of the family. A blood pattern expert concluded that the positioning of the stains placed Henri in close proximity to blood sources, while force was being applied to them, and that the pattern did not support several parts of Henri's version of events. The court eventually described the evidence like pieces of a mosaic. Individually, some could perhaps be explained. Together, the judge found they pointed in one direction: Henri. And then there was the only other survivor, Marli. She had suffered extensive head and neck injuries. She underwent treatment and survived, but she reportedly developed retrograde amnesia relating to the attack, meaning she couldn't provide the courtroom with the answer everybody wanted. She did not testify at Henri's trial. Imagine surviving something that killed your mother, father, and brother, only to have no reliable memory of the moment that could explain everything. For prosecutors, that meant they couldn't build the case around an eyewitness. They had to reconstruct the night using science. For more than a year after the killings, Henri wasn't immediately charged. Investigators continued building the case. Then, in June 2016, Henri handed himself over and formally faced 3 murder charges, 1 attempted murder charge, and a charge of defeating the ends of justice. He pleaded not guilty. He remained on bail while preparing for trial. Later that year, he and his girlfriend, Danielle Janse van Rensburg, were separately arrested for cannabis possession. But the real trial wouldn't begin until April 2017. South Africa became consumed by it. Was Henri telling the truth? Henri eventually testified in his own defense. He maintained the intruder story. He physically demonstrated inside court how he claimed the fight happened. But Judge Siraj Desai repeatedly questioned the inconsistencies. Why hadn't Henri acted more aggressively to save his family? Why had the attacker supposedly inflicted devastating wounds on everyone else, but relatively superficial injuries on Henri? Why was there no evidence of forced entry? Why did the blood evidence contradict important parts of his story? And why wait so long before calling for help? And this is where the Van Breda case remains strangely incomplete. There has never been one universally accepted explanation. The prosecution suggested tensions inside the family may have been building. There was testimony and argument around relationships between the siblings, drug allegations, and possible conflict inside the home. One suggested scenario was that an argument involving Henri and Rudi escalated. Then the other killings followed once family members became witnesses. But even after the conviction, reporters who covered the entire trial noted there was still no definitive motive. And that matters. Because sometimes people assume if you can't explain why someone would commit a murder, maybe they didn't. But motive and proof are different things. South African prosecutors weren't legally required to explain Henri's psychology. They had to prove that he was the person who committed the crimes. After a long trial, the verdict finally arrived. Judge Desai spent hours working through the evidence. Then he said the conclusion was inescapable. Henri van Breda was found guilty of 3 murders, the attempted murder of Marli, and defeating the ends of justice. The intruder defense had failed. Sentencing followed. Henri received 3 life sentences, 1 for each murder. Another 15 years for attempting to kill Marli, and another year for obstructing justice. The life sentences would keep him imprisoned indefinitely under South African law. Judge Desai described him as a cold-blooded murderer. But outside the legal system, something unusual remained. Some of Henri's own family still stood beside him. Henri's aunt, Linta Nell, was Teresa's sister. And after the verdict, she publicly struggled with what the court had concluded. She said she'd known Henri for 19 years, and nothing about the person she knew had ever made her believe he was dangerous. At one point, when asked whether she needed to know if Henri had actually committed the murders, her answer revealed something more complicated. She essentially said she wanted to continue emotionally supporting him, regardless. And I think that's one of the most human and uncomfortable parts of this case. A guilty verdict doesn't erase somebody's memories of the defendant. To her, this was still her nephew, the boy she'd watched grow up. And those two realities, the person you love and the person the court says committed something horrific, can apparently coexist. Henri's girlfriend, Danielle Janse van Rensburg, went even further. She said she believed he was innocent. She attended the trial. She stayed beside him. She said Henri had been open with her and that the evidence didn't change the person she believed she knew. Danielle argued that nothing short of something completely direct, a confession or undeniable visual evidence, would convince her he'd murdered his family. She also continued receiving correspondence from him after prison, and her support became almost a story within the story. Henri continued fighting the conviction. First, the Western Cape High Court refused leave to appeal in August 2018. Then the Supreme Court of Appeal rejected his petition. He tried again. That failed too. Finally, he approached South Africa's highest court, the Constitutional Court. In July 2019, it dismissed his application, saying it had no reasonable prospect of success. That effectively exhausted the major appeal route. Henri remained convicted. 3 murders and 1 attempted murder, and 1 surviving sister, who couldn't tell anyone what she remembered from that night. And this is why the Van Breda case belongs in our family tragedy series. This story doesn't give us the emotional simplicity we sometimes expect after a verdict. There is no confession, no clear motive, no surviving eyewitness actually able to tell the complete story. And this time, the danger came from the kid of the family. Thanks for joining me tonight. Tomorrow we will have the last episode of the Family Tragedy series. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss it. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and I'll see you on the next episode of the podcast You Can't Unhear.